Yes.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, I think everyone is in already. So I guess we can start the briefing. First of all, welcome everyone. My name is Hernan Epstein. I work in the data development and dissemination unit in UNODC. And I'm here with many of my colleagues, Andrea, Natalia, Anton, and Antonella, and also some colleagues also from Francesca Massanello is also here. We can't see her, but she's there. We have some colleagues from regional offices, Mir Sahid, Rahima. So we're here. We're pretty much the team that takes care of data collections on drugs, both the ARQ, the annual report questionnaire, and the IDS, the individual drug seizures. So it's always good, as we are all here gathered with focal points for both ARQ and IDS. I think you probably at least have heard or seen our names somewhere, probably even corresponded via email with us. So it's always good to put a face to the name. So this is a good opportunity to do that. These are the people you are mostly in contact with. As I said, this meeting is the fourth. I think we have it around five. We planned five regional briefings. This is the fourth one that we're having with focal points from different regions for these two data collections, ARQ and IDS. So this is, of course, for the Asia region. So all of you are either focal points or relevant counterparts providing data for the ARQ or the IDS. Last year, we had we launched the DXP, so we had a series of regional briefings for the ARQ. And actually, they were more divided by language. We had in total about 12 trainings and meetings with countries and regions, gathering more than 600 people from over 100 countries in total. So, and we thought it was quite a good exercise. I mean, we ended up having in the DXP, we end up having now over 1,600 users only for the ARQ. And we got a response rate. We got the response rate for the ARQ in its first year in the DXP of 111 countries, which is at the level which we had before, and it was more than we expected. So we thought this type of briefings were probably very useful for countries and for counterparts working on these data collections. So we thought we would do it again. Also this year we have the new the news that we have also the IDS, the individual drug seizure questionnaire, in the DXP for the first time. So it's also important that focal points for the IDS also know how the DXP works and how this process works as well, and get familiar also with the platform. The goal of these briefings is mainly that you can see how the DXP works, which is our main data collection tool, the data exchange platform. that we use for the collection of these two these two questionnaires. And for you to also get familiar with the contents of the questionnaires. So some of you, this is maybe the first time you're a focal point for these questionnaires. So it's important that you also know what type of information is requested in these questionnaires, and that you ask any questions that you may have as well. This is a very good opportunity for you to ask any questions. We will have at the end a questions and answers session after the presentations, in which you will be able to ask any questions, but also feel free to ask any questions directly on the chat while we are presenting, and we will try to respond there also on the chat. So the idea is also that this is an interactive session, so please do not hesitate to ask questions, to raise your hand if you have any questions. We are here to respond in any doubts you may have, or any or take any suggestions or any comments you may have as well. The way the session is organized is we will start with a few presentations. First, an overview of all the data collections that you have, that UNODC has. Then we will move on to the more in detail presentation on how the DXP, the data exchange platform, works. This is the main tool that we have now for data collections. So it's important that as focal points, you know how this works. And after that, we will have another two presentations, one on most specifically on the ARQ, the annual report questionnaire, and another one more specifically on the IDS, individual drug seizures. And then after that, we will open for questions, if that's okay. If you don't mind, I can start with the first presentation, which will be on the overview of data collections, just to get us warmed up and see what type of data we're collecting, what type of data collections we have here at UNODC. So you can see my data collection, my presentation, right? Yeah, perfect. So we'll start with an overview, like as I said, of the data collections. First, what type of data collections UNODC has on drugs. Then, very superficially, a brief overview of the ARQ and the IDS. Then the recent changes we've had in the ARQ and IDS. As I said, we've had a few changes. You will see them more in detail in this presentation. And also the lessons learned from the ARQ, because last year was the first year where we used the DXP for the ARQ. So we've learned a few things from this experience that we would like to share. What are the data collections that UNODC has? We separate the work that we do from the data perspective on drugs and on crime and criminal justice. On the crime and criminal justice side, we have three main questionnaires. The first one is the CTS, which is the UN Survey on Crime Trends and Operations of Criminal Justice System. We have another one on trafficking in persons, which we call GLOTIP, and another questionnaire on trafficking of firearms, which is called the Illicit Arms Flows Questionnaire. Finally, on the drug side, which is where we work specifically, we have the annual report questionnaire, the ARQ, and the individual drug seizures, the IDS. Now, these two questionnaires are mandated by the International Drug Control Conventions, so countries are requested to report as part of these two international drug conventions, these three international drug conventions. A little bit about the ARQ. What type of data do we collect on the ARQ? We collect aggregated data, so data and information on a wide range of subjects related to drugs, from demand to supply and regulatory issues as well. What do we mean by aggregate? And this is an important, especially when differentiating it from the IDS. Aggregate figures correspond to the total cumulative values during the whole year. This means, for example, a country seized in total during the whole year of 2021, 100 tons of cannabis herb. Okay. So this is the type of information we will actually ask in the ARQ, in the seizures module, in the seizures section. We have an annual submission, so it's submitted every once a year, as its name says and suggests. And the deadline for this year is 31st of July, 2022. The ARQ is with the IDS, one of the main sources for the World Drug Report, and it's also the main source for the UNODC drug database and data portal. And it recently went through a revision, an in-depth revision, which was endorsed by the CND in 2020. And as I mentioned, it was launched last year in 2021. We had our first year of data collection last year in 2021 of this new ARQ, and also the new DXP, the new data exchange platform, which is used for this data collection. What's the response rate in Asia? What was the response in last year, the first year we had the ARQ through the DXP? Here you can see in orange those countries that submitted data last year, and in blue those that did not. In total, we had for the Asia Pacific, the response rate was almost at 60%, around 58%. But there are, of course, differences within different subregions. As you can see, in Oceania, the response rate was relatively lower. It was around 13%. And in subregions like Western Asia, Eastern Asia, Southeastern Asia, and Western Asia, it was above 70%. And then in Southern Asia, it was about 55%. In terms of IDS, of the individual drug seizures, what type of data does the IDS collect? The IDS gathers data and information on seizures, so only on seizures. This is different from the ARQ. The ARQ, as I said, it was more on different topics from the data from the drug supply, demand, and other issues. In IDS, it's only focused on seizures with data at the individual level event on a number of different fields. What do we mean by the individual level event or single event? In this case, the figures correspond to the drugs seized in a specific seizure event. So, for example, there was one seizure event in country A, in the city X specifically, on the 31st of March of 2021, in which the police seized 100 kilograms of cannabis herb and arrested a next number of 3 traffickers, for example. We would like to have this type of information for each individual event. This is the type of data that we collect through the IDS. So not the aggregate figures as in the case of the ARQ, but more the details at the individual level of each seizure. The IDS also went through a technical update this year. Andrea will talk a little bit more in detail about this later on. And also, as opposed to what we do with ARQ, we take submissions throughout the year. It's not an yearly exercise, but it's more a continuous exercise throughout the year. The preferred frequency is quarterly, so every 3 months to receive the data from countries if possible. Here you can see the response rate. In blue, in dark blue, the countries that have submitted data for the last 2 years, 20 to 2022 is the year of reference. So what have been the recent improvements in these 2 data collections? There are some improvements that are common to both the ARQ and the IDS. One of them is establishment of a national focal point network. So these focal points are in charge of coordination and communication. I will talk a little bit more about this in the next few slides. This was implemented for the ARQ in 2021, so last year, and this is the first year we have it also for the IDS. So the focal points for the IDS that we have here with us today, this is the first year you're having this exercise, while for the ARQ, you may already have some experience from last year. We also have the new DXP, the new data exchange platform, which is the exchange the website, the web-based platform that we use for data reporting and for communication also with countries. As I mentioned, for the ARQ, we started this last year in 2021, but this is the first year we're using it also for the IDS. So both drug data collections are now on the DXP. In terms of the IDS, a change that was only implemented in the IDS was the technical update, as I mentioned before, of the questionnaire template. And for the ARQ, only specifically, the only recent improvement we've had for the ARQ was only for the ARQ is this new structure, a new questionnaire, revised questionnaire with a modular structure, which we implemented last year, and of which I will talk about further in detail later on. So as I said, we already had 1 year of data collection through the DXP and with the new ARQ. So what have we learned from this? The first one, I think one of the most important things is the importance of the focal points. So you are one of the most important parts of these data collections. What type of roles do focal points take upon in these data collections? The first one is at the coordination at the national level. So focal points are in charge of coordinating the data collection of the ARQ or the IDS as well at the national level. So this means they can provide data directly. This is one of the things they can do in terms of coordination. Invite users to provide data on the DXP as well. So you can reach out to other agencies to also provide data on the DXP and ensure that these agencies do provide this data. And also the quality control of the data submitted. So you can also review the data that other agencies have entered into the DXP and then send it to UNODC through the platform. As you know, these data collections require a lot of coordination at the national level, so this is a very important role. In the ARQ, there are different types of entities involved because we collect data from supply, from demand, from the judiciary system, etc. So a lot of different actors are involved. In the IDS, it's the same thing. We have seizures. There are many agencies and entities in charge of seizing drugs. So we need to have in order to have a complete picture, we need to involve all of these agencies in this exercise. The second important role that the focal points play is in terms of communication. As I said, you can communicate directly with your other counterparts within the country, but also it's important to communicate directly with us, with UNODC. Before we used to communicate with focal points, with permanent missions directly, and through the permanent mission, they would communicate or pass on any questions or comments we may have to you, the technical counterparts. Now, as focal points, we can communicate directly, which greatly diminishes the time. Sorry. Let me see. There we go. Which greatly diminishes the time, response time, and makes the communication a lot more efficient as well. So this is also a very important role that you have as focal points. So, and to show you also the importance of the role of focal points, you can see here the response rates that, as I showed before, for countries in Asia, amongst all the countries. So you can see in Asia Pacific, 58% of all countries as a whole responded to the ARQ last year, 13% in Oceania, between 70 and 80% in Central Asia, Eastern Asia, Southeastern and Western Asia, and 56% in Southern Asia. But if we look only at those countries for which we have focal points, the response rates are a lot higher. For Asia Pacific as a whole, is 83%. So this shows how important it is to have an active focal point and how important it is to have a focal point. So as focal points, you're the first step, and you're the first step in terms of getting the data back. For countries for which we don't have focal points, we don't get any information. And for countries for which we have a focal point, we get very good response rates, as you can see here. So this is the first step. Of course, it's not the only one. Then it's important for you as focal points to be active and to be able to coordinate at the national level and also communicate with us. But this is the first step. So we also ask you if you can see that your country does not have a focal point, for example, for either ARQ or IDS, but you know somebody who could be the focal point, or yourself could be potentially the focal point. Please let us know, because this is the most important step in getting the data from countries. Other lessons learned in terms of the new modular structure of the ARQ. We found that it was possible to increase the thematic coverage, maintaining a relatively lower response burden, because now we have rotating modules, so not everything is asked every year as it was in the past. It also facilitates the coordination, this modular structure, because it's possible to assign one agency to a specific module. Before, this was not so easy with the previous ARQ, but now this allows to do this a lot easier. So you can say, Minister of Health, please respond to the question, to the module on prevalence. And this is easy to do on the platform, and it facilitates this coordination. And also we received positive feedback in general on the user friendliness of the modules. In terms of the reporting data through the DXP platform, we found that this facilitates efficient coordination at the national level. First, it works as I think many countries started using the platform as a national directory of relevant institutions. So this was a use we had not envisioned for the DXP, but it was, I think, a value added also for countries, because you can have a central directory of agencies that are involved in data collections. For data providers can also submit information directly on the platform, as it was mentioned. It doesn't have to go through before you had to go through the technical counterpart and through the permanent mission as well. So before the coordinator at the national level had to collect all the data and input it into the questionnaire. Now it's possible to directly put the questionnaire, the data in the questionnaire in the platform for all the other agencies. And focal points can revise and submit the information as mentioned before as well. So you have a data quality role as well in this data collection. It allows also for real-time monitoring of submissions, which is also very useful, also for permanent missions. We also have tried to provide personalized support to users experiencing technical problems in accessing the platform. This is something that came up often, unfortunately. Many users had, or a number of users had technical issues in terms of accessing the platform, but we always were able to find, in a way, a solution. So what we ask you is also, if you have issues, if you have problem accessing the platform, the DXP, please let us know as soon as possible. Don't let it sit. Let us know, and we'll try to find a solution, because otherwise we won't be able to carry on with the data collection. So please let us know. You have here is the contact for the ARQ, but we also will share all the contacts also for the IDS, where you can contact us if you have any issues with the platform. And also the communication through the platform proved to be a success. We used to send tens or even sometimes hundreds of non-verbals to permanent missions in terms of communicating about data validation. Now this was reduced greatly in the ARQ last year, thanks to this communication platform that allowed for a much more direct communication and with the technical counterparts of the countries. So that is the first of the presentations we have for today, an overview of what we've been doing, of the data collections we have and what we've been doing in the last year. Now we thought it would be good to have to show you how the DXP, how the data exchange platform works. Some of you are familiar with it, some of you may not so much. So Natalia will go through a presentation in which she will explain the main steps on how to operate the DXP, the data exchange platform. Natalia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Hernan. Good morning, good afternoon, dear colleagues. I will present you the main functionalities of the DXP platform. I hope that you can see my presentation.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So I will present you the main features of the DXP. I hope that some of you have substantial experience already with the data exchange platform. However, I still believe that there are some tricks and some new features which can be useful for you. So as you all know, the data exchange platform is an online platform with restricted access. Only users who have been invited and registered on the platform can access the platform. So currently, we have three types of users on the platform. The permanent mission users, which accounts for is created by the ONODC, and they have only supervisory role. So they can only review the data, but they cannot provide or correct the data which has been submitted by the member state. The other type of users are the national focal points, and as Hernan mentioned before, they are very crucial for the submission of the data. They have the biggest set of rights on the platform. So they can invite new users, data providers, they can assign national reporting entities, they can assign also modules to the national reporting module to entities. They can complete the modules, and they are the only one who can officially submit data to the ONODC. The third type of, and their account is also created by us, by ONODC. The third type of users are the data providers. They are registered on the platform by the national focal points, and they have very, very important role. They are the ones who provide data on the platform and who can complete the modules. And no matter who has created the account on the DXP, whether the ONODC or the focal point, once the account has been created on the platform, every user who has been registered will receive an automatically generated invitation email sent by Unite Identity. So basically, this email is very, very important because it has a unique link in it. And by pressing this link, you will go to a short registration process. So this process at the end will lead you to a web page of Unite Identity, which is not the login page, but simply shows you that your registration process has been successful. And very often, these automatically generated invitation emails land in spam folder. So please, if we send you an email that we have registered you and you have not received this email, check the spam folder or inform us, and we will resend you once again the invitation email. So once you have successfully completed the registration process, you should go to the web page of the data exchange platform, which is dxp.unodc.org, and you have to press the login Azure AD button, provide your username and password, and access the platform. As Hernan mentioned, currently we have some difficulties with some accounts of the users. So if you experience any type of problem with accessing the platform, please let us know and we will try to solve the problem as soon as possible. So once the user is registered on the platform, depending on the role of the user, different users will have different views. However, all the users, upon login on the first page, will see the blue banner with the UNODC sign to the left, and there is a tab Language to the right. So the Language tab to the right allows you to select one of the 6 UN languages in which you want to see your questionnaire to be displayed. So by pressing it, you will see a drop-down menu, and you can select in which language either the IDS questionnaire or the ARQ questionnaire to be displayed. To the left, you have several tabs. And the first tab, My Assigned Campaigns, is visible by all users. So IDS users, DXP users, ARQ users, focal points data providers, and below it we have the current campaign tab, campaigns tab. And this is the tab which gives you access to the questionnaire. Below this, you will see in blue the links to the IDS questionnaire or the link to the ARQ questionnaire, depending on which questionnaire you have been assigned to. Next to the current campaigns questionnaire, there is a tab previous campaigns. This tab is for the ARQ users, and by pressing this tab, they can access the data which has been provided for the ARQ 2020 in the previous ARQ campaign by the member state. This data currently is only for the review from the users. It's only in the read access module, so no data can be added or no data can be corrected there. Up to my assigned campaigns questionnaire, there is a tab My Assigned Manufacturer Users. This tab is for the ARQ users, and this is a new item which we require in the module A13. Basically, we require data on licit manufacturers of drugs. So you can provide this data either by going to the module A13, the second item, or directly pressing the tab here. And finally, we have My Focal Point Assignments. This tab is visible only from the focal points, from IDS ARQ focal points. And by pressing these focal points, the tab, My Focal Points Assignment tabs, the focal points will be able to assign new users, new national reporting entities, and also to assign modules to these national reporting entities. So how can the national focal point invite national counterparts to access the data exchange platform? So the first step is by pressing the My Focal Point Assignment tab, you will see below the globe and the name of your country. So by pressing the globe, you will go to the web page of your country, and you will see to the left a black button which says Invite User and assign to this entity. So by pressing this tab, you will be able to assign a user to the country. So you will see to the left, after pressing the black button, a window in which says Invite User assigned to this entity, and you have to provide the first name, the last name, the email address, and this here to select also the questionnaire to which you want to assign the user. So once you press the OK sign, this user automatically will receive the email, which I have shown you some slides before, and should go through the registration process. After the user is assigned, the focal point can also assign national reporting entities. How it is done? And on the front page of the country, there is also a tab which says National Reporting Entities. And by pressing this tab, to the right, there is a black button which says Add Entity. So by pressing this button, the focal point will be able to add national reporting entity for his country on the data exchange platform. So to the left, there is a free text window in which he can provide the name of the national reporting entity. And by pressing OK, the national reporting entities will be added to the list of the national reporting entities for this country. So here, by pressing the globe, which is in front of the national reporting entity, in the list of national reporting entities, the focal point can go to the web page of the national reporting entity and assign users and also assign modules to these national reporting entities. Before this, I just missed to say what are the national reporting entities. National reporting entities are ministries, national police, customs, research institutions, universities, all institutions which can provide data to the ARQ, and all this organization serves like a database for the focal point in order to know which are the reporting institutions and which are the users from these institutions which provide data for the annual report questionnaires. So how to assign users to an entity? Here we have selected the Ministry of Justice, and in order to assign a user to the Ministry of Justice, there are two ways. Either press the black button to the left which says Invite Users and assign to this entity. In this way, this is the same procedure as assigning a user to the country, which we have seen some slides before. Or you go to the black button, which is to the right, which says assign existing user to this entity. So by pressing this button, you will be able to assign a user who has already been registered for the country to assign it to this entity. So how it works? By pressing this button, to the left, you will see a drop-down menu with all the users, and you can select user by user and assign it to this entity. In addition to assigning users, the focal point can also assign modules to the national reporting entity. So this means these are the modules which the users of this national reporting entity will be able to see and to answer. How the focal point can assign modules by pressing the button Questionnaire Module Management, the tab, which is of the two available tabs when he enters the web page of the national reporting entity. And below this, there is a black button to the right, which says Assign Questionnaire Module. When the focal point presses this button, he will see a drop-down menu with all available ARQ modules. So this also includes the modules from the previous campaigns. So he can select which modules to assign to the entity, one by pressing the OK sign. So once the users have been assigned to the entity and the modules have been assigned to the entity, the users will be able to reply and to see only this module. So in this example, which is on the slide, the users of the Ministry of Health will be only able to provide data on the 3 modules which are here in the list. However, the focal point can assign one module to several different entities. So people from different national counterparts can answer the same modules. This requires a lot of coordination from the focal point. So it's easy because somehow the platform it's very helpful because many users can work simultaneously, provide data on the same module. However, when they start to answer the same question, this requires a lot of attention and coordination from the focal point. So in order to facilitate this, we have several functionality on data exchange platform. One of them is Excel download, in which every user can download all the data which have been provided for the quantitative question in Excel tables and share it with other institutions. And we can currently download all the modules in the PDF format, also with the data and with the tables included in this module. So these are very helpful functionalities, but however, when several people work on the platform, it can happen that one person overrides the data provided with or deletes the data provided from another data provider. So in order to facilitate and to check the data which has been provided by different users on the data exchange platform, we have a function which is called historization, and which allows every user to see the different values which have been provided for every data point on the platform. And I would like to start and show you this function. When you open an item and some table or question, to some of the values provided for some data points, next to them you will see a clock sign. This clock sign means that a value has been changed over the campaign, and by pressing this clock sign, you will see a pop-up window in which you can see the first value which was provided for this data point, who has provided the value, and when the value has been provided. And later on, you can see who is the user who has changed the value, what is the new value, and when the value has been updated. And some very helpful feature, which is not related to coordination, but which facilitates a lot of the users, is the customization function, which we have on the platform. You can see up in front of the age group a wheel sign. When you see this wheel sign in front of different disaggregations, mainly on age groups and drug disaggregations, this means that this table, this disaggregation can be customized. And it's very often when we have for the household school service, in our table, we have a predefined age groups. However, if you have a survey with different age groups than the ones reported in the table, you can press this sign and provide the age groups which corresponds to your survey. It's the same with drugs. We have a predefined list of drugs and drugs groups. However, if you want to add drugs which are not reported in the list, you can press this sign and add the drug which is typical for your country and which you want to report in the annual report questionnaire. Also, sometimes we ask for many different disaggregations. And if your country does not collect data on this disaggregation, you can press this wheel sign and hide the columns or disaggregations for which you don't have data. And in addition to this function, I already mentioned that we have a nice PDF printing functionality. How you can print a module. When you open the initial site of every module, there is in the middle up a button which says Show Print Preview. After pressing this button, you will see a window with the drop-down menus. The first one is Hide Data in Print View, which if you press it, you will print just the questions without the data which has been provided. And below this, you have Table Display mode. So you can choose whether to hide the tables and print only the questions, to print all the tables, no matter whether there has been data provided in these tables, or print only the tables for which you have provided the data. Once you have decided what you would like to print from this module, you should press the OK sign. And after pressing the OK sign, you will be in print view mode. So in this print view mode allows you to print the module in the PDF. How you print the module in the PDF? By going to your browser, and usually to the left there are either 3 dots or lines for example, for Mozilla, where you can press it and find the print option and select to print the module in the PDF format. But you can also, before printing the module in the PDF, you can extract all the tables in one Excel file, and this you can do it just by printing the download visible tables in Excel. So in this way, you can have all the tables in one Excel file. After the data has been provided by the focal points, the data have to be submitted. The submission procedure is different for the IDS and for the ARQ. The data for the IDS is submitted once the focal point, once the metadata has been provided on the platform and the focal points have uploaded the filled Excel template. For the ARQ, as the data is online filled, it requires official submission by the focal point. So before, when we open every single module, in front of every item, there is a drop-down menu which says pending completion. And when you press it, you will see several possibilities. Completed, completed, no data available, completed, no answer. So when the data provider reads the question, we would like to ask him, even if there is no data or no answer, to select one of these possibilities, options, in order that we know that he has read the question, but simply the country does not have the necessary data. So once every item has been completed, and when an item is completed, it's colored in green in the front page of the module, then the module can be completed, and every data provider can complete the module by pressing the red button, Complete Module, and confirming. So after the module is completed, an automatic notification is sent to the national focal point, who can submit the module. So the red button at the bottom is only visible to the focal point. So after he verifies the data and confirms that this is the data which the country wants to submit to the UNODC, he should press the red submit button, and the module will be submitted to the UNODC and will be ready for review from the UNODC point. So how the data is reviewed by the UNODC, both once for the ARQ questionnaire and for the IDS questionnaire, the review process follows the same steps. Once the data is submitted, the teams reviews the data and starts a discussion with the if there are outstanding questions with the focal points or with the users of the platform. Before, these discussions were handled through either through emails or non-verbals. Now we use the discussion functionality or discussion tool, which is on the DXP platform. And I will show you how to use the discussion tool. If you open an item, in front of every question, you will see a blue bubble sign. This blue bubble sign is actually an icon for our discussion tool. If you open one of them, you will see a window which says discussion threads for the respective question, and you can start a discussion. You should provide the title of the discussion and the message which you want to decide to discuss with your colleagues. If you want to discuss something just with your colleague, you can flag this discussion as internal. If you want to discuss this with the UNODC, you just press and start the discussion. And also, who can start the discussion? Any user who is on the DXP can start a discussion. And also, the UNODC can start a discussion. Once a discussion is started, it will be in the open mode, and a message will be sent to the focal point. If the message is started from the UNODC, the information email will be sent to the focal point of the country. If the discussion is started from the country, it will go to the UNODC focal point. And when this discussion has been started on the platform, automatically an email will be sent to the focal point, informing him that for the questionnaire on which question, who has started the discussion, and the message of the discussion. So this is the message which the focal point will receive. However, by going to the beginning of the module, user on the platform can see whether there are open discussion for the respective item. So at the start page, initial page of every module, there is a column which says open discussions. So in this column, you can see for every item how many discussions, internal or external discussions, how many of them are open, and how to see which are the open discussions for this item. By going to the item, you will see that some of the bubble signs are colored in blue and some of them are colored in green with the number above them. So all these discussions which are colored in green with a number above them means that on this question there is an open discussion. You can see also bubble signs with a number above them colored in blue. This means that there have been discussions on this question, however, they have been closed. So the issue has been solved either by UNODC or by the country. So you can, by pressing this bubble, you can also review what was the issue and how it has been solved. So these are basically the main functionalities of the ARQ of the DXP platform. And finally, I would like to take the opportunity to thank all the users of the platform for their valuable feedbacks and for reporting us technical issues which we are trying to solve as soon as possible. And finally, I would like to especially thank the colleagues from the regional office for their valuable support in reaching out the focal points and data providers and verifying the data submitted by the member states. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalia. Thank you for the great presentation. We hope this brings some clarity on how to operate through the DXP and all the possibilities there are through this platform. We will also share some documents with step-by-step guidelines on how to do these kinds of things that Natalia mentioned, invite national counterparts, how to access the platform, etc. They are in English for now, but okay, we hope they have lots of screenshots, so hopefully they're very useful in this sense. Even if you don't speak English, it should be clear in terms of all the different screenshots. I think we can move on to the next presentation, if that's okay. I don't know if there are any questions. I don't see.
We have one question, Hernan.
Yeah.
In terms of communication, I'm not sure if you can see it.
Ah, if it's possible,
So, yeah.
yeah, to consider the issue of sending this information to a personal email in Russian. We can explore ways of trying to. This is something we're working on, trying to translate some of the materials that we have into different languages. These are the six languages of the UN. Maybe it's something we can also discuss internally and with our regional offices. We would like, of course, we know that having this material in different languages is very important, and we're going to try to do our best efforts to try to translate them and send them in different languages. So we will try to do our best, and we also will keep. We are thinking also of holding potentially a separate briefing, maybe with some countries, if necessary, in Russian. So we will try to look into this in the future, maybe later on. Unfortunately, it's not something we can do right away, but this is something we're also exploring. So it would be good to maybe, if it's necessary, if there's a need for this, we can definitely have a separate briefing. We have colleagues that can also help with the translation or interpretation in Russian, so we can also have direct meetings with countries in different languages in some cases. Okay, I hope that responds to the question. I don't know if we have any other questions.
We have a raised hand.
Yeah. See. Mr. Michael Miatari.
Yes, Mr. Hernan. This is Mike Miatari from the Philippines, specifically from the Dangerous Drugs Board. I would like to inquire if the user accounts previously registered in the ARQ are still in effect, or will there be changes based on what we're going to submit through our national focal points? This is in relation with our previous concern that there are information that will better be answered by a different government agency. However, in terms of protocol, we can't directly designate that focal person from a different agency without an endorsement of a national focal entity. On this case, we think it's the Department of Foreign Affairs.
Yes, in principle, all the users from the previous year are passed on to this year as well. If there are any changes, again, please let us know. We can implement any changes you would need. I don't know if I mean if you think a certain user should not be in the platform, we can always. It's possible to remove them.
Is there a
If you think a new
chance
one should
for,
be, yeah.
sorry,
Yeah.
follow-up question is there a chance where we could also get the agency aside from the email addresses of the email accounts included in the ARQ registry? There are email accounts which are not identifiable to the agency that they are representing, and thus we may not be able to verify the names and the owners of those user accounts. Will appreciate if we could have a list of the agencies being represented on the email accounts included in the database.
Yeah, of course. For those users for which we have the agency, we can share. I mean, it's definitely possible to share it. Yes, indeed, indeed. Yeah. I mean, yes. I don't know, Natalia, if you want to add anything.
Yes, for the users which we have registered and for which we have registered the agency, of course, we will provide you this information. However, if a user has been registered by the focal point and the agency has not been provided on the DXP, we don't have, unfortunately, the information about this. But yes, we can provide you with all the information and we can register any institutional email which you want, general email.
Thank you very much, Sir Hernan and Ms. Natalia. For documentation purposes, would you prefer this inquiry to be raised as well through the official channel at UNODC-ARQ@UN.org?
Yes, please.
An email would suffice. Yeah. It doesn't have to be an overball or anything, but an email is more than enough. But yeah, yes, definitely.
Perfect. Last concern, may we verify, we've seen the infographic a while ago that there are no entries in the Philippines in terms of the individual drug seizure. May we know if you have a current record of who's the user account that's been given access to the IDS?
Yes, we can definitely give you this information. I don't know if we know it on the spot. I don't know, Andrea or Antonella, if we have this information. Otherwise, we can provide you the information via email as well.
Yeah, we have three national counterparts for the individual drug seizure data collection. So we can then maybe communicate this by email to you.
Yes, we'll include that as well in our email. Perhaps we could help in coordinating the compliance of the Philippines in the data needed for the IDS. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miatari. We have also a raised hand. Also, I'm not sure from where it is. It's QB7765, the user. You can take the floor.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm the national point from Pakistan.
Hello.
My name is Sijil Heather. We have two questions actually. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. My first question is, we have account from two different mail IDs. One is my personal and one is also used by staff. But when I want to access to IDS from my personal email account so that I can also supervise IDS, IDS doesn't show on that. My second question is, Pakistan is one of the very leading contributor in international drug seizures. Like Pakistan sees about 15 to 16% of opiates annually of overall international seizures. So at average, we have 65 to 70,000 individual drug seizures at various locations. We have some agencies like the Principal Agency of Pakistan, Anti-Narcotics Force. It has capacity to record and to report all seizures. But our provincial police, it is not so far possible for them to supply data on the prescribed format on individual case basis. So previously we had a practice of sharing some data in individual format and some data on monthly seizures of some agencies. So would you keep some flexibility in this module of IDS so that we can give a conclusive picture by the same pattern? Thank you much.
Thank you very much for these questions. On the first one, on the using the personal email, it should be possible. If you have it is possible to use a personal email to access the DXP, and you should be able to access the IDS. So if you're having any issues, please let us know via email, maybe specifying which user it is, and we can take a closer look if you can't access IDS through your personal email. But in principle, it's possible, and you can use it to monitor also what other national entities are providing. In terms of the IDS, I can defer to either Andrea or Fran. I don't know if either of you wants to explain, to take the floor for this.
Andrea, do you want me to say something, or do you? Okay, I'll go ahead. Thank you very much for the question on the IDS. Perhaps what we can do, we have other countries that are experiencing a similar problem with the sheer volume of information that needs to be collected and digested. So what we try to do with some countries is also try to cater to, let's say, a slightly more individual approach that also meets your needs and helps to collect as much data as possible. If agreeable, we could have a separate meeting together with Andrea and myself, and we could discuss what could be the best approach for you. Of course, aggregate monthly data is very useful for UNODC as well. However, when it comes to the IDS specifically, then we suffer from a data loss there because we can't use the information in the same way. So if agreeable, then Andrea and I can reach out and we could have a dedicated talk about this.
Yeah, and thank you much for responding in a conclusive manner. We would welcome a separate meeting on the subject of IDS. We previously had a meeting about 2-3 years back with Ms. Angela May at UNODC headquarters in Vienna on this issue. And we will suggest that there should be some flexibility in IDS reporting system so that the countries having huge seizures and huge number of seizures plus in volume and in number, if they do not have capacity, they might be able to furnish it on monthly basis or weekly basis or some pattern like that. Thank you much for your response.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we will then reach out and we can discuss this bilaterally, I guess. Please do send us the information for the user, and then we can also connect to discuss this issue bilaterally as well. Okay, I don't see many other questions, I don't think. No, okay. So then we can continue. We have a couple more presentations left. So I will now share my screen. I will talk a little bit now about the contents of the ARQ a bit more in detail. You can see my screen. Perfect.
Yes.
Good. Thank you. A bit about what I'll talk about in this presentation. What is the status of the focal points for the ARQ? So I will only speak about the ARQ in this case, and then Andrea will talk a bit more about the IDS and what we do with the data on drugs as well. In terms of the ARQ, I'll talk a bit about the focal points of the ARQ, the structure of the questionnaire, the changes with respect to last year, and some takeaway messages for you to take home as focal points as well. In terms of focal points, as I said before, the coverage of focal points is very important. It's the first step in getting the data collected. So it's a very important first step. Here you can see in orange the countries that have focal points, and in blue those that don't. And here it's by region, by sub-region, as I mentioned before. For the Asia Pacific, we have about 70% of countries with focal points. The lowest one being in Oceania, where we have 25% of countries with focal points. But in some regions, for example, in Central Asia, we have all countries with focal points. What is the structure of the ARQ? In the past, I mean, if you have been involved in the ARQ for some time, at least for a couple of years, you may be familiar with these images you see on the screen, these files we used to use in the past for data collection. We had 2 Excel files and 2 Word files that we would send to countries via email. Then countries would collect the data, input the data into these files, and then send them to us. Now the way in which we collect the data is different. We now do it through the DXP, but also the contents are different. Now we have the same. Now we have data organized in a different manner. We have annual modules, which are modules, sets of mini questionnaires in a way that cover different issues on an annual level. So every year they are present in the ARQ and they're part of the ARQ. And we also have rotating modules, which are modules that cover issues that are asked every 2, 3, or 5 years. So they're not asked every year. And this helps decrease the burden on member states. So the data we previously had, for example, on part 3, 2 years ago on part 3 of the ARQ, which was mostly related to quantitative information on drug demand, is now covered in these first 6 modules in red, in the annual modules in the ARQ. In terms of supply quantitative data that we used to collect on part 4 of the ARQ in the past, now it's collected in these annual modules in blue: seizures and trafficking, laboratories, cultivation and eradication, prices and purities, and drug-related crime. While the other information which we had in the Word files mostly was mostly related to the national and legislative framework in the country, and also about policies and strategies and drug demand and drug supply reduction strategies in the countries. These are things that do not change so much year to year, so it's not necessary to report them every year, and that's why they're part mostly of the rotating modules. In addition, we also have new information with respect to what we were collecting in the past. For example, the last time the ARQ was revised and before was around 2009. So the phenomena of sales on the internet was not as big, but now it's an important issue. So now this has been included in the ARQ as a new subject on which we collect data. And also there are issues that in the past were collected that are not collected anymore as well. So some data that has entered, and some data that has some questions that have entered, and some questions that have left the questionnaire. On the type of data that we collect, we organize the questions in 3 types: type 1, 2, and 3. Data type 1 refers to qualitative information that requires basic capacity to monitor. And here you can see an example from mortality, from drug-related mortality. We ask on new developments in drug-related mortality in the country. So this is qualitative data that all countries should be able to respond to, and all countries should have some knowledge about this. So we expect that that all countries will be able to respond to data type 1. Data type 2 refers to quantitative information that requires intermediate capacity to collect and monitor. This is, for example, total drug-related, direct drug-related deaths. This, we know not all countries will have it, but we expect a good number of countries to be able to report on this type of information. Finally, data type 3, which is more complex quantitative information that requires a higher level of capacity to collect and monitor. This is, for example, again, an example from drug-related mortality. Mortality in specific groups of the population, such as persons with disabilities, people in rural areas, indigenous persons, etc. This is data that we know the majority of countries won't have, but we do expect maybe some countries that will be able to collect this data, and that's why we also include it in the questionnaire, because it's important to be able to collect these often highly disaggregated data from the countries that do have it. What's the structure of these rotating modules that I mentioned before in the presentation? We have about 12 rotating modules with different periodicities, so different frequencies in which we ask them. Some are every 2 years, some are every 3, and there's one that is actually every 5 years. For 2022, these are the 5 modules that we're asking this year. One on prisons, on acute intoxications and non-fatal overdoses, on prevention of drug use, and the prevention of infectious diseases, and on alternative development. As mentioned before, the deadline for the submission is the 31st of July of both annual and rotating modules. So this year you will have the 15 annual modules plus these 5 rotating modules, a total of 20 modules. And one thing that also we noticed from last year, the first year of data collection of the ARQ through the DXP, and with this new modular structure, is the following. We took a look at which were the most popular modules, in a way, those for which we received the most data. And we noticed that for supply data, we got more responses in general. Out of the 7 modules that were most reported, 4 are from supply: seizures, cultivation and eradication, laboratories, and prices and purities. And from demand, registries and prevalence, for example, we got good response rates. They're in the top 3. But on the other hand, for example, treatment and people who inject drugs, you can see the response rate was not as high relative to the other modules. And finally, we also noticed that the rotating modules were at the bottom. So the ones in green are those that are rotating modules. As you can see, the 6 rotating modules we had last year, we all had the worst response rate in a way, the lowest response rate. So in a way, probably some countries gave priority to the annual modules and less priority to the rotating ones. What are the changes this year in terms of the rotating modules? Last year we had these 6 modules which are not going to be asked or collected this year. Links with other activities, such as other organized crime-related activities, supply reduction and international cooperation, alternatives to conviction or punishment, and illicit financial flows and money laundering. These 4 will come back next year. The frequency is every 2 years, so they will come back next year. Access to control medications, also we won't be asking this year, and it will come back on 2024. So it has a frequency of 3 years. And the national framework, which was a very, probably one of the largest modules we have, but at the same time, is a module that does not change too much year to year. We won't be collecting this again until 2026, so in 4 years. Which are the new modules that are going to be part of the ARQ this year? As mentioned before, on the right you have a column with content, which may help you figure out which would be the right agencies to collect these type of data, because you have a description of the type of data we are collecting in each of these 6 modules. Prisons is one, acute intoxication and non-fatal overdoses, prevention of drug use, prevention of infectious diseases, alternative development, and also a new one this year is new psychoactive substances identified. And finally, some key takeaway messages that are important, we believe, as focal points. The first one, as I mentioned before, if your country does not have an ARQ or an IDS focal point, please reach out to us, as you are probably in a much better position than we are to be able to find somebody in the country that could play this role of a focal point for these two data collections. As focal points, please ensure to reach out to the relevant counterparts to ensure the data for all modules can be gathered. Please ensure that you register them in the DXP, that these counterparts are registered in the DXP and assigned to the corresponding modules in the way that Natalia showed you. If you think another institution also should be a focal point to ensure proper coordination, please let us know. For example, if you're a focal point for the ARQ, you are mostly on the supply side, for example, the Ministry of Interior, or you think you may need additional help to coordinate on the demand side type of data, you can also reach out and let us know, and we can try to find, and it's possible to have more than one focal point. So if the country wants to have one focal point on supply and one on demand, for example, this is also possible. So keep this in mind. Please also collect all the relevant modules, the relevant data for all the modules, again, including the rotating ones. If no data are available or the responses from the previous cycle has not changed, please still submit all the modules by indicating the most appropriate response in the way that also Natalia presented. This is a way for us to know that the focal point has gone through the question and then they are reporting that there is no data. Otherwise, we sometimes don't know if the country maybe did skip the question and did not consider it. So it's good also to mark this, to signal it to us that you have gone through the question and you have considered it and realized that there's no data, for example. All countries should be able to provide data to responses to type 1 questions. So please keep this in mind also when you go through the questionnaire. Again, the deadline for submission is 31st of July of 2022. And finally, I think one of the main takeaway messages is please reach out to us if you need any support. We're here to help you, so please do not hesitate to write to us. You have here is the address on the ARQ, but also on the IDS. We've shared this already. So if you have issues with these questionnaires, either ARQ or IDS, please reach out to us, and we can support you and provide any help you may need. Thank you very much again for your attention and for your support and your collaboration in the ARQ. I will now pass on the floor to Andrea, who will present on the content of the IDS. Andrea, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Hernan. I will share the presentation. Please let me know if you can see full screen.
Yes.
Great, thank you. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrea Oterova, and I'm part of the data dissemination team that focuses on the collection, the processing, and the dissemination of individual drug seizure data. So as Hernan mentioned, I will focus more on the individual drug seizure collection, talk about the definition, the mandates, about how this data is to be reported to us. And I will also explain the main elements of the technical update that we have implemented this year. Then I will finalize my presentation by showing the value of you as our national counterparts reporting ARQ and IDS data to us, and I will talk about how we disseminate the data and what type of publications we do with this data that is reported to us. So the individual drug seizure data collection is one of the mandated data collections that we manage. It's mandated by the International Drug Conventions that were mentioned earlier, the 1961, 71, and the 88 Convention. Individual drug seizure data, the collection focuses on the collection of all the singular interceptions of drugs by law enforcement agencies, taking into account a specific place and time of the event, and it covers individual drug seizure cases that take place within the national territory of member states. Each event can cover one or more seizures, one or more drugs, sorry, and it can be reported with one or more traffickers. IDS represents data at the individual level. So as Hernan already mentioned, the annual report questionnaire in the module A07 collects data on aggregate seizures. So these are seizures that are collected throughout the year. So it's the cumulative total of all the seizures collected in the year. So that's the aggregate that is reported as part of the annual report questionnaire. Here in the individual drug seizure data collection, we are collecting each individual interception which takes place at a specific place and point in time. So this is the main difference, as you can see at the bottom part of my slide, between the aggregate and single drug seizure events. So for example, if we have a total of 100 tons of cocaine seized in a specific country in a specific year, this will be reported in the annual report questionnaire. Now, if these 100 tons of cocaine are disaggregated into each individual seizure, all the data on the individual seizures is to be reported in the individual drug seizure data collection. This year, we have implemented 3 improvements in the individual drug seizure data collection. The first one is that we are now going to collect data through the DXP. The second one is that we have implemented the technical update. And the third one is the way in which we disseminate in an improved manner this data. So now I would like to talk a bit about the new way of reporting, or the improved way of reporting individual drug seizure data. So with the objective of centralizing the collection and the reporting of data on drugs at UNODC, we are now moving from receiving individual drug seizure data through email, and it is now to be reported through the data exchange platform. The IDS data is uploaded in a whole file. So in this, it differs from the annual report questionnaire, where aggregate data is entered, each data point into the system, given that individual drug seizures can cover, as already mentioned by some participants, a very large amount of data. It is to be uploaded in whole files. When it is uploaded into the DXP, if there are changes, we would like to always be aware and informed by national counterparts, and the same applies for deletion of files. So if a file is uploaded, but some changes for some specific individual drug seizure events have been implemented by the country, and now the country uploads a second file, we would like to be informed about these changes. Or if a country deletes a file and uploads a new one, also we would like to know. The deadline for the annual report questionnaire, as Hernan mentioned, is 31st of July. So the data is submitted once a year, and the ARQ is collecting data for the estimate year 2021. The IDS, on the other hand, is a data collection where submissions are done throughout the year. So when the data is centralized at the national level and is validated and checked by the national focal points, it is to be submitted to UNODC, and preferably in a quarterly manner. So it should be submitted with the following deadlines. Data that covers Q1 for 2022, for the year 2022, is to be submitted by 30th of June of 2022. For the second quarter of the year 2022, we expect to receive the data by the 30th of September, and so on for the third quarter by the 31st of December. Data for the last quarter of 2022 is to be submitted to UNODC by 31st of March of 2023. So we expect 4 submissions, optimally 4 files with all the individual drug seizures for each quarter of the year in question. So how do a national counterparts submit data through the DXP? Natalia has extensively explained several elements of the DXP, how countries can log in, how they access the ARQ and the IDS, and so on. But I'll zoom in more into the individual drug seizure in specific, also just to recap how this is to be submitted. So as Natalia has already mentioned, national focal points, national counterparts that are reporting data on IDS will be are invited to register to the DXP. So they should check also their spam folder, then junk folder, because sometimes the emails go there, and they will receive an invitation from an email, Unite Identity. And there they will have a link that they follow to register into the DXP. If the national counterpart is also a national counterpart reporting for the ARQ, this national counterpart, by logging in into the DXP, will see the tab of the IDS where this person can go and submit the data. So once the national counterpart logs in, the IDS module will be visible, and one is to select that. We have also translations, as mentioned by Natalia, so one can select the official United Nations languages, as you can see here. This is a case when a national focal point reports only in the individual drug seizure data, so the individual drug seizure tab will be shown. When a national focal point also reports on the annual report questionnaire, then as you can see on the left side here, both questionnaires will be shown, and the national counterpart is to select the IDS tab and select the preferable language. Once one goes into the IDS tab, there is an option to select the module. And once the module is selected, you will see a description of the individual drug seizures. Here we give you the definition and the deadlines. And then to submit the data, one has to click at the bottom of the page and select to provide data. This is the space in the data exchange platform that you can see on my slide, where national counterparts are to upload IDS files. On the top, you can see a table. Here is where all the guidance notes and the templates in all the official languages are available. So the country can download them, and then the data can be filled in the Excel file, and the data is to be uploaded, as I mentioned, preferably 4 files a year. So for every quarter, we would have 1 file with all the individual drug seizures for that quarter. Then the national counterpart is to specify the coverage of the data. What is the starting month and what is the ending month? Also provide us data on the contributors and whether the data submitted covers is of national coverage in terms of the agencies. And then on the right side, there is an option to upload the data by clicking on the Browse button. As I mentioned before, the goal of moving the collection of IDS data into the DXP is to centralize collection on this on all the drug data on ARQ and IDS, but also to make communication between within national counterparts, as well as between UNODC and national counterparts, more prompt. And here you can see that if you have a question, you can submit it by clicking on the communication icon in the individual drug seizures part of the DXP. And I I identified here. So in terms of the submissions of data into the IDS, the focal points, the national counterparts that are reporting the data either at subnational level or national level, and the ones that are centralizing the data at national level are crucially important for us and for us to be able to provide a good picture on drug trafficking at the global level. So here I wanted to show you a map just to give you an idea of the coverage that we have in terms of the focal points for your region, which you can see on the left side of the slide, and in terms of the submissions of data on the right side. So the submissions of data represent countries which submitted data at least once between 2020 and 2022. And in dark blue, you can see countries where we have a focal point on the left side and that submitted data on the right side. When we don't have a focal point, obviously we don't receive data. So we kindly ask you to help us follow up in also identifying focal points for the IDS data collection. So for example, if you are a focal point for the annual report questionnaire and you see on this map that we don't have a focal point, a national counterpart for the individual drug seizure data, and you know of someone in your institution or you could provide this data to an ODC, please do get in touch with us. We really need focal points at the national level to be able to be aligned with the conventions on this mandated data collection. So here you can see that we do have focal points for 60% of the country, so the coverage is relatively good. However, the response rate is still at 19%, so there is still a lot to do on our side and on the side of the national counterparts. So please do get in touch with us if you can help us identify focal points, if you can help us follow up on data submissions for your countries. Now the IDS template has this year gone through a technical update. So we have implemented some improvements to this data collection to be able to make it more user-friendly, to be able to collect relevant data and to streamline the template. And we have also further extended our guidance notes. So we now have new guidance notes that go very much in detail on how countries should report, what is expected, and what is the best way to report this data to an ODC. Another big element of this technical update was to look at data that exists globally and to try and harmonize the data collection, globally by allowing for comparability. So in order to do this, what we did is that we created mutually exclusive responses. So we provide member states with a list of responses for each variable. To be able to harmonize this data throughout. We are aware that some countries may not be able to be in line with the standards, but the goal in the long term is that the standards will be adapted nationally so that we have harmonized comparable data globally where possible. And in the meantime, we would be very pleased to communicate with national counterparts on how the data can be standardized. And also, if you see that you have a lot of data on a specific variable and you see that we don't have one of the responses that would apply to your country, please let us know. For example, if in terms of concealment or transportation or other variables, you have a lot of values for a specific classifier response, but you don't see it in our template, please do get in touch. We also ask countries that they go in as much detail as possible and that they report in a consistent manner. So we also provide a drug list, a UNODC standard drug list with specific names of drugs, as well as their groupings into drug groups. So when drug data is reported, so this applies to the variables on the drug name quantity unit. We prefer that countries provide as much detail as possible. For example, if there is a seizure on a specific date in a specific place of cannabis resin, we prefer that a country reports cannabis resin rather than cannabis. For example, if cocaine salts, if there's a seizure of cocaine salts, instead of reporting just cocaine, we prefer that the detail of the drug is provided. So in cocaine salts instead of cocaine. You can see at the sorry, because I hear an echo. Okay, thank you. So at the bottom, you can see a snapshot of part of the IDS template, the new IDS template. It's quite similar to the previous one, but it's more streamlined, and we have more guidance notes on how to report. So in terms of the content of the template and the variables that we collect, we have some core information without which we cannot process the data. And this includes the date of the seizure, the location, and then variables relating to the drug seized. And we also have a binary question with a binary response where we ask whether seizure was part of an operation. Often countries will report to us large seizures, which represent an operation rather than one specific individual event of an apprehension at a specific place and point in time. And it is crucial for us to know the difference between this operation that perhaps covers a week of seizures and each individual drug seizure that belongs to that operation. We do not request exact names or identifiers of operations. Countries can report anonymous identifiers or names for operations. And in terms of the location as well, we always aim to anonymize the location. So we provide data if there is address, for example, we provide data on the town that relates to that, or a village or a city. Other important information that we collect is data on the trafficking route. So we collect data on the producing country, departure country, transit countries, as well as the destination country. And we have one variable that tells us whether, which is called drug route, which tells us whether it is a seizure leaving the country or whether it's a seizure entering the country, or whether the seizure is taking place within the national territory. Other variables that we collect specify the type of location. So that's the previous installation that we were collecting, but now it's more streamlined. Then the method of concealment. We also collect information on the number of traffickers, the sex and age of traffickers, information on the type and name of agency. We ask whether the seizure is part of an international cooperation. And then we have one last column on which is called the narrative. And here we ask countries to provide any data that does not fit within the variables of the template, and any important information relating to the specific seizure cases is to be reported here. So here a country can report more information on the operation or concealment method or additional items seized. This year we are also collecting data on additional items that were seized with the specific drug. So this year we collect data, for example, on whether firearms were seized jointly with drugs, or other items such as currency and so on. So the key takeaways from the IDS data collection and relating to the way that national counterparts are to report data to UNODC is that we ask that when this data is reported, produced, and submitted, that it is done with as much accuracy as possible. It's important that as much detail as possible is provided to us so that we can make the best value out of this data, that we have the highest quality and precision possible, and at the same time we anonymize the data, so we take out any information that would help a user that is using this data, looking at this data, identify a specific trafficker or law enforcement agency or a specific brand. Then we ask you to please use the guidance notes, which are available on the data exchange platform. We ask you, when possible, to use the standard lists for the variables, for reporting on specific variables. It is very important to us that the data is timely. So at the moment, we are already collecting data for the first quarter of 2022. So if your country has not yet reported this data, we ask that you please report it to us. Please share any limitations, either with the way the data is reporting within your country or with the standards that we have in the template, any complexities of your data. The better we understand the data, the better we can process it and the higher quality it will have. If the data coverage is partial, so for example, if the data that you're providing to us only covers a certain geographical area, it is subnational data, or whether only specific agencies reporting are covered there, or if only a certain period is covered for some reason, please do inform us about it. We have a sheet on a tab in the Excel file where the data is to be reported, which is the first tab where we ask questions about coverage. We also want to know whether there is potential for duplicates. So often countries will indicate that they centralize the data and that from several agencies through several tools, and that there is potential for duplicates. We always check for duplicates, but it always helps us when a country points out to us that it is possible that there are several duplicates in the data set that they reported. And then also we ask you to please use the narrative column to provide additional information that is important for each of the seizure cases reported. So now that we have explained extensively about the annual report questionnaire and the individual drug seizure data collections, we want to now show you what value this data has for member states and for you as our national counterparts. So I will talk a bit about how we disseminate the data, how do we use the collected data, and I would like to close this presentation with a note on cooperation, and then we can open the floor for questions and answers. So the annual report questionnaire data that is reported to UNODC by member states is disseminated through the data portal. On the left side, you can see a snapshot of the data portal where I identify the drug demand and the drug supply tabs. So this is where you can find data on indicators from the annual report questionnaire from the drug demand and the drug supply side. On the right side, there is a snapshot of our disseminating tool for the individual drug seizure data, the drugs monitoring platform through which the individual drug seizure reported by member states is disseminated. Some of you may be familiar with the drugs monitoring platform, some not, so I will talk a bit more about this soon. So the way that the individual drug seizure data was disseminated until now, it was through UNODC website, where biannually we published reports in an Excel file. Now we have improved the way in which individual drug seizure data is disseminated, and we do it through the drugs monitoring platform, which allows users to see this data in Excel, but also in other visualizations where one can filter, for example, the country or the drug that one wants to see. Data in the drugs monitoring platform is updated throughout the year. It is standardized, and we produce regular briefs with this data. The drugs monitoring platform is an online geocoded system with over 490,000 seizure events. So as you can see on the right side, I'm providing a map here of drug seizure data, individual drug seizure data covering June to December 2021, where you can see that each data point is identified on the map and geolocated. And we have different icons to identify also the drug, the specific drug that the seizure is covering. So it is a platform for visualizing and disseminating seizure data. It provides interactive maps. It's a tool for monitoring drug trafficking trends, and it allows countries to identify emerging threats. The target audience are member states, mainly law enforcement agencies and analysts from member states, and you, national counterparts as well, are invited to register to the drugs monitoring platform if you're not yet a member of the drugs monitoring platform. The system has several advantages. Apart from the visualizations that it provides, it improves understanding of evolving threats, and it allows access to a global picture beyond on borders on drug trafficking. The drugs monitoring platform has a public and a private environment. The public environment only publishes a selected number of variables, and all the data is anonymized, and the private environment is for the users, so for you, for member states to view the data. Now, so this was a bit about the dissemination of the annual report questionnaire and the individual drug seizure data. Now, I would like to show you some products that we produce with the data that you report to us. So this is how we bring the value of the data to you, to member states, to our partners. So here you can see the publications that we produce. On the left side is the flagship publication, which we publish every year, the World Drug Report, which covers several topics on the spectrum of drug demand and drug supply, and both the annual report questionnaire and the individual drug seizure are sources for this publication. This publication always also provides a chapter on a specific topic. So, for example, youth, or other topics that are of focus in the specific year. Also, for example, trafficking on the black market and so on. Then the drugs monitoring platform, also our team produces regular briefs. So we are now working on the fifth briefs. We have already published 4 briefs, and you can see 2 of them here on the top of the screen. We also have a publication called Data Matters, and these are regular research briefs on several topics from the crime or the drug data that we receive from member states, and the drug data, the reports that relate to the drug data use as the source the annual report questionnaire and the individual drug seizure data. And then we also have ad hoc reports. So, for example, we had a few reports on the situation of the pandemic and how this relates, for example, to the drug supply chain, and so on. So for these publications to have the quality that allows member states to access good data on the global picture of the drug situation, we heavily rely on the data that is reported as part of the mandated conventions. So we would like to close this presentation with a big thank you to you, our national counterparts. Our joint efforts really count and allow us to provide an accurate and complete picture of the global drug situation. And we would like to ask you to keep helping us in providing this accurate picture by reporting in a regular and timely manner, by helping us identify data reporting national counterparts and focal points, also follow up on the submission of data for your country, please. And please register on the drugs monitoring platform as well. We will share all the links in a document in the chat after this presentation, and we will send you also a document with all the links mentioned here, and with documentation relating to the DXP and also the presentations. And we thank you very much for your cooperation. Please do get in touch with us if you have any questions, or if you want to share any feedback or provide any comments. We are here accessible. Thank you very much. I will now open the floor for questions and answers.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Just a couple of questions, a couple of issues before we open the floor. One thing is on the maps that we've showed. These are of course the most up-to-date information we have up to a certain date in which we created these maps. So it's possible that some of it may be not fully up to date, especially for the IDS, because IDS is a data collection we collect for continuously throughout the year. So there may be some countries for which it's a moving picture in a way. So there may be some countries for which we're receiving data in early June and late May, so maybe a few weeks ago. So just to let you know that this is, of course, a moving picture, and the map changes, especially for IDS, all the time. But this gives you a very good idea of the type of response rates and focal points that we have for both data collections. A second point that I wanted to reemphasize, very important, that Andrea made on the work that we're doing for this data, for the dissemination of the data, and how we are trying to do this for you. I mean, in the end, the main goal of this exercise is to try to provide you with the most accurate picture in order for you to be able to use this data. That's the main goal for us. If nobody uses the data and the products that we create, it's not worth doing it. So we also want to in a way try to have you to look at this, to use this data as best as you can, and provide you with all the evidence that you could need in order to, for example, guide national policies and try to create evidence-based policies from your side. And this is the main goal of all this work that we're doing. So again, if you have also, we're open to hearing also suggestions in terms of things we can do. I think the DMP is really an excellent tool with which you can monitor the most up-to-date trends in drug trafficking. Of course, both the ARQ data and the IDS have different advantages and disadvantages. The ARQ, the IDS data and the DMP are a lot more timely, so that you can follow up on much more recent trends on this context, and this can really help you monitor and guide your policies as well. So in the end, this is the main goal of the work that we do, to try to provide you with tools for you to use and both at the national, regional, and global level in your policies and in your own matters in your countries. So just wanted to mention that. If we have any questions, I don't know if there were any questions in the chat. I think we've included a lot of information on the chat as well, so please be sure to check. You have our contacts, you have some of the analytical products, some of the resources that you can have to access to operate in the DXP and to report on IDS and ARQ. I don't see any questions on the chat. Unless my colleagues have missed something. I'm asking my colleagues if there's anything. Nothing. If anyone wants to also take the floor, please raise your hand. We'll be happy to give you the floor. Any questions? Yes, we have Vera. The floor is yours.
Hello, dear colleagues. Thank you very much for your very detailed introduction on IDS and ARQ. We just noticed that the guidance notes for rotating modules of the ARQ are still written in English, not translated into Chinese. Could you please help us to translate it, because it would be more easier for my colleagues to read those guidance notes before they filling in the forms, as some of them may not very good at English. Thank you.
Thank you, Vera, yes, for the comment. Yes, we will try to gradually translate all the material that we have into the different languages, and this is definitely one of our priorities. So thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you. We totally understand that there must be very huge amount of work for you to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't see anyone else taking the floor or raising their hand or any questions in the chat. Yeah, somebody from Sri Lanka, a colleague is asking if we can please share the presentations. Yes, we will share the presentations via email, and we will also share the documents that we've been talking about as well with guidelines. And eventually we will also share the recordings of these sessions. So you can also, if there's somebody who joins your team in terms of reporting for ARQ or IDS later on, you can show them this recording, and it can be a good starter for them on how to operate on the DXP. And so we will do that. I don't see any more questions or raised hands, and I think we're approaching the 10 o'clock hour mark here in Vienna, so only 2 minutes left. I think we can then close the meeting if this is okay with everyone, unless I don't see any more raised hands. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending. These are very important activities for us, trying to also communicate directly with you as focal points. It's extremely important for us to make sure that we can support you in the best way. I think one of the main takeaways from this meeting is please reach out to us if you have any questions. We are here to support you and to help you with this. So please write us. You have all our contacts here, and we're always open to holding bilateral meetings with countries, calls with countries in this sense. We're always available for this if you need any personalized support on the DXP or on the ARQ or IDS, please let us know. And again, to reiterate once again how important the work you are doing is, and how important you are in terms of this whole process of data collection and using data for data policy making and also for guiding countries in the fight against drugs. So again, if there's nothing left to say, I don't see still anyone with a raised hand. I think we can close the meeting. Again, thank you very much, and please don't hesitate to contact us. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
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 Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.